Jason. They had been together for 5 years, sharing countless moments of joy, navigating through the ups and downs of life. Their relationship was built on trust, or so she thought. They lived together in a small but cozy apartment, where everything seemed perfect on the surface. Friends often envied them for how stable and happy they appeared. But over the past few months, Sarah started noticing subtle changes in Jason's behavior. It was nothing too alarming at first, just small things: a decline in the frequency of their conversations, the way he'd hesitate when she asked about his day, and most troubling, the nights he'd come home late from work. She brushed off her concerns, not wanting to be the paranoid girlfriend who read too much into things. She reasoned that everyone had rough patches, and maybe Jason was just stressed from work. Then one evening, Jason's phone buzzed on the coffee table. Normally, Sarah wouldn't pay attention to his messages, but this time, something inside her felt off. As he showered, she glanced at the screen. A message preview from a contact saved as Jess appeared: *I miss you, can't wait to see you again. *. Sarah's heart dropped. Her mind raced with questions. Who was Jess? Why would she miss Jason? Why was Jason seeing her? Sarah felt a mixture of anger and fear swelling in her chest, her fingers trembling as she opened the phone. She knew it was an invasion of privacy, but at that moment, she didn't care. The truth was more important. The messages revealed a painful story. Jason and Jess had been meeting for weeks, exchanging flirtatious messages and planning secret rendezvous. Sarah's hands felt cold as she read each message, her vision blurring with tears. It wasn't just casual, it was emotional. Jason had shared things with Jess that Sarah thought were meant only for her. By the time Jason returned from the shower, Sarah was sitting silently on the couch, his phone in her hand. He froze in the doorway, his face instantly betraying him. He knew. "Sarah, I can explain," he stammered, but the damage was done. The truth had already unraveled, and their once solid foundation had crumbled. Sarah couldn't even look at him without feeling the sharp sting of betrayal. That night marked the beginning of a storm that would forever change the course of their relationship. Chapter 2: Confrontation. The silence between them was suffocating. Sarah's mind raced with memories of their life together, each one now tainted by the thought of Jason's betrayal. She couldn't reconcile the man standing in front of her with the one who had shared secret messages and intimate moments with someone else. "Explain." Sarah's voice was barely above a whisper, but the weight of the word hung in the air. Her eyes locked onto Jason's, demanding a truth she wasn't sure she wanted to hear. Jason swallowed hard. He fumbled with his hands, unsure of where to begin. "It's not what you think," he started, but Sarah cut him off. "What is it then, Jason?" "Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you've been cheating on me with Jess," she said, the anger finally breaking through the shock. Jason's face paled, and for a moment, he looked like a man who had just realized the enormity of his mistake. "I never meant for this to happen," he said, sitting down on the edge of the couch, his head in his hands. "It started as just talking, you know. I was stressed out, and she was there to listen. One thing led to another, and," his voice trailed off. "And what?" Sarah demanded, her voice trembling. "You thought it was okay to betray me because you were stressed." Jason shook his head. "No, I didn't mean to hurt you. I never wanted this to get out of hand. I didn't think," he stopped himself, realizing how hollow his words sounded. There was no excuse, and he knew it. Sarah stood up, pacing the room as if moving could help her process the mess unfolding before her. "You didn't think," she muttered bitterly. "That's the problem. You didn't think about me. About us." Her voice cracked, but she forced herself to keep talking, not wanting to give in to the flood of tears threatening to overwhelm her. Jason looked up at her, his eyes full of guilt, but Sarah wasn't ready for his apologies. How long? She asked, her voice sharp. How long have you been seeing her? A couple of months, Jason admitted, his voice barely audible. Sarah's stomach twisted. Months, she repeated, as if saying it out loud would make it easier to grasp. 4 months, while they shared their lives, their bed, their plans for the future, Jason had been living a lie. She felt like a fool. Jason stood up, reaching for her, but Sarah backed away, holding up her hands. Don't. Just, don't. She couldn't bear the thought of him touching her. The warmth of his embrace, which had always been a source of comfort, now felt like a betrayal. Sarah, please, Jason pleaded, his voice cracking. I'll end it. I swear. I'll do whatever it takes to fix this. Fix this. Sarah echoed, incredulous. Do you think you can just wave a magic wand and make this go away? You cheated on me, Jason. You lied to me. I don't even know who you are anymore. Her words hit him hard. Jason slumped back onto the couch, defeated. He knew she was right. There was no simple way to undo the damage he had caused. For the next few minutes, the room was filled with silence, the weight of their broken relationship hanging heavy between them. Sarah didn't know what to say or feel. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to make him understand the depth of her pain. Another part of her wanted to break down and cry, to mourn the loss of the trust and love they had once shared. Finally, Sarah spoke, her voice steady but cold. You need to leave. Jason looked up, panic flashing in his eyes. What? No, Sarah, we can work through this. Please, don't make me leave. You made that decision when you cheated on me, she said firmly, her resolve strengthening. I need time. I need space. I can't even look at you right now. Jason stood, his shoulders sagging in defeat. He walked toward the door, grabbing his coat without a word. Before he left, he turned to face her one last time. I'm sorry, Sarah. I really am. But Sarah couldn't respond. She stood frozen, her arms crossed tightly over her chest, as Jason closed the door behind him. The moment he left, the floodgates opened, and Sarah collapsed onto the couch, her sobs shaking her entire body. She had just ended a 5-year relationship in a single night. The life she thought she had, the future she had envisioned, was gone, replaced by a painful void that she didn't know how to fill. Chapter 3, The Aftermath. The days that followed felt surreal. Sarah moved through them in a daze, unsure of how to begin picking up the pieces of her shattered life. She barely left the apartment, choosing instead to bury herself in blankets on the couch, replaying every memory of her relationship with Jason. Each time she thought about his betrayal, the pain hit her fresh, like a wave crashing against her. Her phone buzzed constantly, friends checking in, Jason trying to reach out. But Sarah ignored them all. She wasn't ready to talk, not to anyone. The only thing she managed to do was scroll through Reddit, losing herself in other people's stories, hoping to find some comfort in knowing she wasn't alone. It was in a late night, insomnia-fueled haze that Sarah stumbled across r/relationships. The subreddit was filled with people sharing stories of their heartbreak, their struggles, their attempts to rebuild after betrayals. Some posts were eerily similar to her own situation, and for the first time since discovering Jason's infidelity, Sarah didn't feel so alone. Tentatively, she crafted her own post, titled, "My boyfriend of 5 years cheated on me, and I don't know how to move on." She poured her heart out in the post, detailing the discovery, the confrontation, and the overwhelming grief she felt. By the time she finished typing, her fingers were shaking, but posting her story felt like a release. She hit submit and waited. Within minutes, the responses started pouring in. Strangers from all over the world offered advice, support, and shared their own experiences. Some had left their partners and rebuilt their lives. Others had chosen to work through the betrayal and stay. But all of them understood the pain Sarah was feeling, and that understanding was exactly what she needed. As she read the responses, something began to shift inside her. The pain was still there, sharp and unrelenting, but Sarah realized she wasn't alone in this. There were people she didn't even know who cared enough to help her through this, and maybe, just maybe, she would be okay. To be continued. Chapter 4, The Pain of Moving On. In the weeks that followed, Sarah slowly tried to put her life back together. It wasn't easy. Every morning felt like a battle to get out of bed, every task felt monumental, and the silence in the apartment was deafening. She had kicked Jason out the night of their confrontation, and though he had begged for another chance, Sarah couldn't bring herself to forgive him. The trust had been shattered, and there was no going back. She spent her days working remotely, trying to focus on her job, but her mind kept drifting back to Jason and everything they had built together. Nights were the hardest. She would lie awake for hours, staring at the ceiling, replaying their relationship in her mind. The betrayal haunted her, and she wondered if she had missed the signs earlier. Her friends were supportive, encouraging her to go out and take her mind off things, but Sarah couldn't bear the thought of socializing. The idea of pretending to be okay when she was anything but was exhausting. She declined every invitation, choosing instead to lose herself in Netflix and Reddit, where she continued to find solace in other people's stories. One evening, Sarah's phone buzzed with a message from her best friend, Lily. She had been avoiding most of her friends, but Lily was persistent. You can't keep shutting yourself away like this, Sarah. Let's get coffee tomorrow. Please. Sarah stared at the message for a long time, debating whether she had the energy to meet up. She knew Lily meant well, but Sarah wasn't ready to face the outside world. After a few minutes, she finally responded, I'm not ready yet, Lil. I just need more time. Lily's response was immediate, I understand. But I'm here when you're ready. Love you, girl. Sarah put her phone down and sighed. She knew her friends were worried, but moving on felt impossible right now. She wasn't sure she even wanted to move on. How could she, when the wound was still so fresh? Chapter 5, The Message. Weeks later, Sarah's life had fallen into a kind of painful rhythm. She woke up, worked, avoided her friends, and spent her nights scrolling through the internet or crying herself to sleep. One evening, while she was going through her routine of mindlessly browsing Reddit, she received a private message notification. It was from an unfamiliar username, Hey, I came across your post in r/relationships about your breakup. I went through something similar, and I just wanted to reach out. It does get better, I promise. I know it doesn't feel like it now, but hang in there. If you ever need to talk, I'm here. Sarah stared at the message, her heart skipping a beat. She had never expected anyone to privately reach out to her about her post. She had written it weeks ago, and while the outpouring of support had helped, this message felt more personal, like someone genuinely understood what she was going through. She hesitated for a moment, then typed back a simple, thanks. I really appreciate that. The user responded quickly, no problem. Seriously, if you ever want to vent or just talk, I'm here. Breakups are the worst, especially when there's cheating involved. I went through a similar experience, and it took me a long time to feel like myself again. Sarah found herself typing more than she intended, I feel like I'm never going to get over it. It's been weeks, and I still feel just as lost as I did the night I found out. The user replied, that's totally normal. There's no timeline for healing, but it does help to talk about it. I know it did for me. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. Asterisk. For the first time in weeks, Sarah felt a tiny sliver of hope. Maybe it wouldn't hurt to talk to someone who had been through the same thing. She spent the rest of the evening exchanging messages with the stranger, sharing her story in more detail than she had ever shared with anyone else. It felt oddly freeing, like she was unburdening herself piece by piece. Chapter 6, Healing in Unexpected Places. Days turned into weeks, and Sarah continued to message the Reddit user, who introduced himself as Mark. Their conversations, though anonymous, felt more genuine than any of the awkward exchanges she had with her real-life friends. There was something about talking to someone who didn't know her, who didn't have preconceived notions about her relationship, that felt refreshing. Mark shared his own experience, how he had been engaged when he found out his fiancée was cheating. The pain, the anger, the confusion, it all mirrored what Sarah was going through, and knowing someone had survived that kind of heartbreak gave her hope that she could, too. Mark never pushed her to talk when she wasn't ready, and their conversations weren't always about the breakup. Sometimes they talked about random things, movies they both liked, the books they were reading, and the frustrations of daily life. It was nice to have someone to talk to without the weight of her heartbreak looming over every conversation. As time went on, Sarah began to notice small changes in herself. She wasn't crying as often, and the anger that had once consumed her started to fade. She found herself reaching out to friends again, accepting their invitations for coffee or dinner. The pain was still there, but it was less overwhelming, like a dull ache instead of a sharp stab. One day, after an unusually long and thoughtful message exchange with Mark, Sarah realized something: she was healing. It wasn't a sudden epiphany, but rather a slow recognition that the weight on her chest wasn't as heavy as it had been. She could breathe again, laugh again, and, most importantly, she could see a future where she wasn't defined by Jason's betrayal. Chapter 7, The Turning Point. Months had passed since the night Sarah had confronted Jason, and though the wound was still there, it was no longer the defining feature of her life. She had started going to the gym again, reconnecting with friends, and even entertaining the idea of dating someday in the distant future. The idea didn't scare her as much as it once had. She wasn't ready yet, but for the first time, she could imagine it. Jason had reached out a few times, asking for another chance, but Sarah had remained firm in her decision. She couldn't go back to him, no matter how much he apologized. Too much had been broken. One evening, as Sarah was scrolling through Reddit, she saw a new message from Mark. He had become a constant in her life, a voice of comfort during her hardest moments. But tonight's message was different. Hey, Sarah. I've been thinking, we've been talking for months now, and I feel like I know you pretty well. I was wondering if maybe you'd want to meet in person sometime. No pressure, but I thought it might be nice to put a face to the name. Sarah's heart raced. Meeting Mark? The thought terrified and excited her at the same time. She had grown to trust him through their messages, but meeting in person felt like such a huge step. Could she do it? Was she ready? She didn't know the answer, but as she stared at his message, a small smile tugged at her lips. Maybe, just maybe, she was ready for something new. Chapter 8, The Decision. Sarah sat at her kitchen table, staring at Mark's message for what felt like hours. Her mind raced with 1,000 thoughts. Could she really meet him? Was it too soon? What if things didn't feel the same in person? She had become so comfortable talking to him through the safety of a screen that the idea of meeting face to face felt overwhelming. But at the same time, there was a sense of excitement stirring inside her. For months, Mark had been her lifeline, the person she could confide in without judgment. He had seen her at her lowest and had helped her begin to heal. Maybe it was time to take that next step, to see if the connection they had built online could translate into real life. Taking a deep breath, Sarah typed back, "I've been thinking about it too. I'm nervous, but I'd like to meet. Maybe we could grab coffee next weekend." Asterisk. She hesitated for a moment before hitting send, her stomach fluttering with nerves. Almost immediately, Mark responded, "That sounds great. No pressure, we can just keep it casual and see how it goes. I'm really looking forward to it." Asterisk. As soon as she read his reply, a wave of both relief and anxiety washed over her. She had made the decision, but now the hard part was waiting. Over the next few days, the thought of meeting Mark occupied her mind constantly. She found herself replaying their conversations, wondering what he'd be like in person. Would it be awkward? Would they get along as well as they did online? She confided in Lily, her best friend, who was thrilled that Sarah was finally taking a step forward. "This is huge, Sarah," Lily said over coffee. "It's like you're opening a new chapter in your life. You deserve to feel happy again, and if this Mark guy has been there for you all this time, maybe it's worth seeing where it goes." Sarah smiled, but the nerves still gnawed at her. "I know, but what if it's weird? What if we meet and the chemistry isn't there in person?" Lily shrugged, taking a sip of her coffee. "You won't know until you try. And if it's weird, then at least you'll know. But from everything you've told me, he sounds like a good guy. Plus, after what you've been through, you deserve to take a chance on something new." Lily's encouragement helped ease some of Sarah's fears, but as the weekend approached, the anxiety only intensified. She picked out her outfit for their coffee meetup 3 times, second-guessing everything. She wasn't sure why she felt so nervous after all. She and Mark had been talking for months. But meeting someone who had become so important to her felt like stepping into unfamiliar territory. Chapter 9, The Meeting. The day had finally arrived. Sarah woke up with her heart pounding in her chest, the nerves refusing to subside. She had arranged to meet Mark at a small cafe downtown, a place she had chosen specifically because of its cozy, relaxed atmosphere. It was the kind of place where people could have long conversations without feeling rushed, and that's exactly what she needed, a space where they could talk without pressure. As she arrived at the cafe, her palms felt clammy, and she struggled to keep her breathing steady. She scanned the room nervously, looking for Mark. They had exchanged photos before, so she knew what he looked like, but she still felt a wave of uncertainty wash over her. Then she saw him. Mark was sitting at a small table near the window, sipping on a cup of coffee. He looked just like his pictures, tall, with a kind smile and an easygoing demeanor. He spotted her almost immediately and waved, standing up as she approached. "Hey, Sarah," he said warmly, his voice instantly putting her at ease. "It's really good to finally meet you." Sarah smiled nervously. "Yeah, it feels a little surreal, doesn't it?" Mark laughed softly, motioning for her to sit. "Definitely. But in a good way. I'm really glad you decided to meet." As they sat down and began talking, Sarah's initial nervousness started to fade. The conversation flowed naturally, just like it had online. They talked about everything: work, life, and even some of the deeper conversations they'd had over messages. It wasn't awkward or forced, and Sarah felt herself relaxing more and more with each passing minute. At one point, as they were laughing about a shared inside joke from their earlier conversations, Sarah realized something. This was the first time in a long while that she had felt genuinely happy. Not the forced kind of happiness she'd put on for others, but a real, unfiltered joy. It was like a weight had been lifted from her chest, and for the first time since Jason's betrayal, she wasn't thinking about the past. Mark must have sensed the shift in her mood, because he smiled gently. "I've been wanting to say this for a while, but I'm really proud of how far you've come," he said. "I know it hasn't been easy, but you're stronger than you think." Sarah blinked, feeling a lump form in her throat. She hadn't expected such a heartfelt comment, and it took her a moment to respond. "Thank you," she said quietly, her voice thick with emotion. "I honestly don't think I would have gotten through it without your support." Mark smiled again, his eyes soft with understanding. "I'm just glad I could be there for you. You've helped me too, more than you know." For a while, they sat in comfortable silence, the warmth of the cafe wrapping around them like a comforting blanket. Sarah realized that, for the first time in months, she felt at peace. Chapter 10, A New Beginning. Over the next few weeks, Sarah and Mark began to see each other more frequently. It wasn't like the whirlwind romance she had once imagined, but something much better, a slow, steady friendship that was growing into something deeper. They spent time together going on walks, having long conversations, and sharing parts of their lives that went beyond their initial online connection. Sarah still had moments of doubt, flashbacks to Jason, the betrayal, the pain. But with Mark, she felt safe. He never rushed her, never pushed her beyond what she was ready for. He was just there, steady and patient, giving her the space she needed to heal while offering support when she needed it. One evening, as they sat together on a park bench, watching the sunset, Sarah turned to Mark with a quiet smile. "I think I'm finally ready," she said softly, her heart racing at the admission. Mark looked at her, his expression gentle but curious. "Ready for what?" "For this," Sarah said, gesturing between them. "For us. I wasn't sure if I would ever be able to open up again, but I think I'm ready to try." Mark's smile was warm, his eyes full of understanding. "I'm glad you feel that way," he said. "But no matter what, just know that I'm here for you, however you need me." Sarah felt a surge of warmth in her chest. It wasn't just the comfort of knowing Mark was there for her, but the realization that she had taken control of her own healing. The betrayal that had once defined her life no longer held power over her. She was ready to move forward, not because someone else was there to save her, but because she had found the strength within herself. As they sat there, the sky turning shades of pink and orange, Sarah knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter. A chapter not defined by pain or heartbreak, but by hope, growth, and the promise of what was to come. The end. To be continued.